A wonderful morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure after the foodie session, you're keen to learn what the mentors on stage have to share with you. We're calling it the Leaders Panel, but I think we'll have the panelists focus on what I believe is the most necessary part of the world, which is what do they know that we don't know, and what would you like them to tell you to, in the future, become better at what you do from the learnings that they've had through their career. So we'll dive straight into it, and while the introductions have been made to all of you, may I request all of you just pick up one incident or one learning or one communication from a mentor that has stayed with you and has shaped your professional career or your attitude to work, which you find as you deal with people around you that somehow other people seem not to pick up. But it made a huge sea change to your life. You want to go first, Rohit? We kind of bounce around the panel.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. One of my mentors told me that there is no shortcut to success. And I guess in the hospitality business, there's no shortcut to hard work. What I find today is that while there is a lot of talk about work-life balance, I think our young colleagues sometimes forget that ours is a 24/7 industry, and it's people's business. There's no real time in and time out, and you have to really work hard to go where you want to go in life. So for me, the most important thing is to put in your effort, full effort, and do the right thing, and you have to really work hard and put in long hours.
So Navjit, may I bounce to you from Oberoi Hotels to a learning curve, then development, now a different company. Much more would have happened to you during your career so far, which shaped you. So try and put it into one learning which encapsulates all the new things that came across because of 4 different life-changing experiences.
Yeah, I think my advice to everybody is never be scared from stepping back to learn a new skill. I've done that all my life, and I've not done it consciously, but it's just the way it happened. And I think that's helped me tremendously. I passed out of EME, as many others in this room have done, and I met Mr. Oberoi, and he said to me, "Have you worked in the kitchen?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, how can you be a GM if you've never done a stint in the kitchen, if you've never been a chef?" And he sent me off to the kitchen, and my batchmates were laughing because I was pulling stores, and I was kind of working back in the kitchen after spending quite a bit of time in hotel operations. But I think that at that time, I don't think I really loved it, but I think back now, and it shaped me in many ways. And I was with Mr. Oberoi only 3 or 4 days back, and I was telling him that I'll always be grateful to you for what you did to me by doing that. And then again, I was working as F&B manager, and then I spoke to Mana when I wanted to join HVS. And again, I stepped back, and I started as an analyst at HVS. And, so I've kind of always done that, stepped back, learned a new skill. And I think in many ways, the switch from Marriott to Hilton is, in a way, getting out of your comfort zone, learning something new, and taking on a new challenge. So I think that's probably the greatest learning I've had in my life.
Mr. Rana, I'll keep Ajay for the last.
Sure. No, thank you for asking. I would say the single biggest learning I've had is change, to be a change leader. Because no matter what, things will be thrown at us which are outside our circle of influence, whether it is the macroeconomics, whether it is the employee turnover at the hotel, whether it be the brands that we are managing, or whether it be the ownership. It does not matter, but change will always happen. And I think those that can manage change will often come out ahead. I have worked in many different countries, many different brands, and I have always felt that the ability to move from one position to the other and to take the talent with you and inspire them to be part of the change helps bring out the best, not only in yourself, but the people around you. So my advice would be that stick to knowing that change is inevitable and start appreciating what is within your circle of influence, and be prepared not to just accept it, but to make sure others feel inspired in the times of uncertainty when facing change.
Ajay? I'll sneak in a couple of things before I get to the learning or learnings, if I may. One is, it's okay to be a normal hotel manager. We've sat through some great innovators this morning. We heard their stories, and yes, they're brilliant stories, and there will be more and more, and I'm sure some of you will form those stories. But it's also okay to be the normal hotel manager who does the long hours and does the routine stuff and is perhaps outwardly a little bit boring. You need all us kind of people there to make the industry go. So that's okay. The other thing is very interesting is the tube light can light up any time. So no one is necessarily born an innovator, and you can think innovation at 10, at 20, at 30, at 40, at 50, at 60. One of the persons fairly well fitted and cited these days is Mika Levy, who's the founder of Citizen M Hotels. And what a fantastic chain of hotels in terms of innovation. Mika worked for 25 years with Sonesta Hotels in the US as a good, strong, solid manager, but unsung hero till he stumbled upon Citizen M. So guys, any of us can hit it off tomorrow. On the learning part, I have two very simple, small learnings to share, which transformed the way I looked at life, the way I worked. One was with the then chairman of Oberoi Hotels, Rai Bahadur Oberoi. I was a very young GM, and I went to see him, and I had these huge problems that I took sort of long time to explain to him. And his answer to the most complex problem was one or two sentences, maybe really a third. So the simplicity with which things were handled was phenomenal. And I think that's what I try and carry through as much as possible to cut down to the bone and just look at things on a more macro front and say, what's the real issue here? The other was a gentleman who's no more, Dean Beck, with a wooden leg from the Normandy invasion, an American gentleman. He was dean at Cornell for many years. And then he set up the program in France that some of us went to. And he said, always take your work seriously, but never take life too seriously. And I think for hotel people more than any other profession, it's great advice. So, you work, you look at life, you look at work seriously, and you always must. But it should not encompass your life overall.
So just to share something personal there, and I think at various stages you've all gone through this with the team members that you work who come to you with challenges and questions. So a gentleman that I worked with many years ago, and I went to him with a problem, and he said, it's not for me to solve your problem. It's for you to suggest to me 3 solutions to your problem. My job is to select from one of them. And if I have to give you a 4th one, then you don't need to be in the job that I've given you. So I think what you'll see is that as we go through game-changing incidents in our environment, there's so much happening in the world of artificial intelligence. People talk about the changes in CRM. We're going wild about social media. But hey, we're supposed to be hoteliers, right? So how are we supposed to incorporate all these changes in our lives? And how do you wish to teach the people who work with you that even if you and I miss the boat, you make sure that they aren't going to do that? So coming to you, Navjit, there's a fair amount that is happening in this part of the world, in social media, artificial intelligence, and the larger companies are able to put in a lot of resources behind that activity. It's a different thing whether owners can afford what they will be made to buy. But if you were to keep it simple in our context, being hospitality professionals, with whatever learnings that we've got, what are the 3 things that you would like to advise everybody here that they need to learn or hone their skills on in this piece so that they are up to speed in what the market desires from them and that they can lead their ship with the expectations that people have?
So I think first is very important to be curious. So it's important to be aware of what is happening around you. And that's, you can get that by actually making sure that you are participating in forums that are outside the industry, that are, different industries, so peers in different groups, so that you can get some best practices that's happening outside our immediate circle. I think that's one. Picking up new skills, as I said, that's very important. And then if you don't have knowledge or have understanding of a particular new thing, is to basically build that complementary skill within your teams. I think that's quite critical.
So if you were to speak about 2 more skills that everybody here should spend the next 365 days honing, name 2 that a classic hotelier and throughout their experience won't really be very savvy on.
I think I would just say you have to be more aware. So I would say, read up, be curious, definitely understand, at least in aspects of what's happening in technology, because I think, as you mentioned, it's very commonly said that artificial intelligence is going to change the world. It's going to be similar to what fire or electricity did to us, a few hundred years ago. So I think if you are not abreast with the latest technology, you wouldn't be aware of how blockchain or how AI or how some of these things are going to dramatically change our industry, which it is going to change our industry. So I think that, in my mind, is the single important most.
Rohit, anything to add on this?
Well, I think analytical ability is very important. What we as hoteliers end up doing is we kind of run our ships or run our trains on time or try to find new trains to run. But we do find that amongst mid-management and general manager level, there is a challenge on analytical ability and fiscal commercial sense. So a lot of general managers get confused with what is very obvious, but in case you need to really do turnaround results, you need to be able to understand the nitty-gritties of business and what levers need to be pressed. So in my opinion, what I would really push for everybody is to hone their analytical ability and their financial skills.
So how would you teach somebody who, for the moment, may be a little off that boil on that one?
So a couple of ways how you can deal with it. Number one, you could have at a group level training program or exposure, like we run in our organization for general managers in consultation with IIMs and also in Nanyang Institute. We do that so that they can understand what the latest trends are, make yourself aware of what's going on in the industry, look at new technologies that are emerging that impact our industry, and also understand how you can analyze your existing business and seize opportunities before they come staring at you. Basically, prepare yourself for change rather than trying to handle change when it hits you. So that's one way. The second way, which I think works very well, is as leaders, is to mentor our teams and simulate certain situations which forces them to look at their ability a little more. And I think here, not because he's in the audience, but when Mr. Chatwal came into the IHCL, what we realized is that all of us as a team really need to understand a business a little better. And I think he, through his own skill, led us through that and exposed us to the various aspects of business, which going forward we did with our SVPs, and then the SVPs did with the area directors, and the area directors with the GMs, and the GMs now. We are at that stage where we are taking it down to the heads of department.
Okay. Ajay, and for you, anything different from what they're saying?
I think from a leader's point of view, it's important that you hire in the team people who understand the subject better than you do, especially if you're not the millennium generation.
Sure.
So it's always good to have a bunch of people who know more than you do and who are always out there on the front foot. And I suggest I cozy up to my IT people as much as I can. I suggest to my team to do that as much as possible. So you hook on to every possible thing that's going out there in social media to understand what the animal is all about.
Sure.
I would say that first and foremost is hard work. The saying goes, in fact, my father often used to tell me that education is a great foundation for hard work to build on. And what I mean with that is that we will continuously need to educate ourselves. Many things will keep happening. The way business is booked, the way business is sold, all artificial intelligence, social media, that's all education. But if you have that, but you're not willing to apply that with hard work and the commitment that it takes to come up to a different level, then all this education and knowledge that you inherit will get wasted. So as much as we talk about life balance, and I'm a big supporter of that, but we still have to remember that there is no substitute for hard work. That's one. Second is legal. I know it sounds counterintuitive to the business that we are in, but we are responsible for millions of dollars worth of assets and at the corporate level in different roles. So unless until we take a legal-minded approach of what is the consequence of the action that we are taking, we probably may not mitigate the risk that we might be exposing the owners to. And even India, of course, I lived in US for a long time, which is, they call it a sue-happy society. Everybody sues everybody else. but in India also, we are finding that the guest, as well as the community stakeholders, are getting more litigious. And we have to be aware of the legal aspects of the business that we are running in. And third is a no-brainer. It is about finance. We are not running a philanthropy, and in fact, even good philanthropies have a financial backing to it. So unless we have financial savviness, we will not be able to do good justice to the job. So it is not no more about just shaking hands in the lobby and being personable. And I know none of you are only doing that. You're personable, of course, but there is more beyond. So please, my suggestion would be to focus on being legally minded, being financially savvy, and of course, stay abreast with the latest. But remember that it is about hard work and making your team part of that.
Yeah, I'd actually, concur with that, because that's two parts that we believe we know, but we know very little of the consequences of both, which is how good is our financial savviness? We may know finance, but are we savvy enough? And the second part is, are we able to interpret certain technicalities around the legal documents that we all sign and we're all responsible for our partners and other people? I'm not sure we do that too well. So I would exhort everybody here in this room to start to look at it a little bit more seriously, because you will be responsible for a large part of it in the future. Changing tack a little bit, and I'll come to both of you and then bring you in on this one. Both of your companies have gone through a bit of a takeover situation recently. So large groups, very successful, but part of an acquisition story. Yeah? How do you handle that situation with your owners, and how do you expect your GMs to handle that situation on your behalf, despite maybe apprehensions that the GMs would have themselves to say, "Ye kya ho raha hai?" So what's your advice to them, and how do you handle the intricacies with the owners in that confusion of their realization that something in their life changed?
Yeah. You want to go first?
I'll go first? Okay. All right.
Wisdom before age.
Thank you. Well, I think there is the team to manage, and there is sensitive information to be communicated in the right fashion. In our case, since the company for the last 2 decades was fairly strongly personality driven, the issue was what's going to happen to these jokers, and if they're not there tomorrow, what happens to us guys?
Sure.
So I think our concern while we were looking at different suitors to do a deal was how would anyone look at the future? And so once this is all done, we made it a point that we communicated as lucidly as is possible, that there is continuity, and everyone in the team is going to continue in the team, and we're not looking at any dramatic changes. From the point of view of the new majority shareholders, we were fortunate. And it could have been somebody whose thinking was dramatically different. In their case, they said, look, you set up a company in India, you set up a brand in India. We understand how complex this market is. We don't want to come and tell you how to run it. We don't want somebody in Paris telling you how to run the show in India, because we know we can't do it. So you guys carry on for a long period of time, as long as possible. And we look at the numbers. And they've been true to their word. So we haven't had a huge amount of dilemma or drama so far, because and a lot of people ask me, what's the change since it all happened? Now, a year and a half down the line, we have PricewaterhouseCoopers as the auditors, and honestly, nothing else has changed really. So we have a free hand. They leave it to us to take investment decisions. They leave it to us to leasing decisions, they leave it to us to take capex decisions. There are always limits, as there are in any organization. But beyond that, we meet at board meetings once in 3 months, and that's where it is. So I think we have been particularly fortunate not to see any trauma in the takeover.
Yours was a different case altogether.
It was, and oftentimes I'm called as the thread of continuity because I've been with Carlson, now Radisson Hotel Group, for 27 years. And oftentimes I'm proud of that as a survivor, been through many different general managers, different vice presidents, different leaders, different ownerships, different countries, and yet I'm still here. So, but going back to, so Carlson, of course, was a privately held company, and it was bought over fully by HNA, which is a Chinese conglomerate, almost $900 billion worth, and they were trying to, or they are trying to expand their hotel empire. But the positive was that although they bought the entire company, I have not seen or met ever anybody from this company. Because to them, this is a subsidiary, which is a standalone hotel business with its own CEO. And they are more managing this through a boardroom style management. Because when you are probably that large as $900 billion and you have so many companies, probably that's the only way you can do it. But coming home, more to what it means to the general managers and to the corporate employees, change will, such a buyout will always result in uncertainty. Because anybody who's buying out a company or any business is buying out for the potential that they see. And the potential oftentimes comes in either in investing more into the core business, but at the same time retaining the talent that they want, but also removing the talent that they believe is not really talent, but needs to move on to other parts. So what we found out was that having a clear-cut plan and transparent conversations with those people that were going to exit, and a lot of people did exit or were made to exit, either way. That communication plan has to be very clear, that you are part of the go-forward team, and therefore you need to be fully committed. And if you choose not to be able to handle this uncertainty, then of course we wish you luck, but we treat you with respect and dignity. But what we found out was, as the saying goes, you don't have to uproot the saplings just because they were planted by someone else. Then there will only be a season and never a forest.
Well said.
So this Chinese company were very respectful, and they were not wanting to make changes just because it was done strategically designed by someone else. And that really helped maintain the core team. And of course, with it also came some new money to go into the technology platforms, and we embarked on a 5-year plan, which is very ambitious to reposition the company. Of course, it does not mean more change will not happen. Change, as I've said, that was my first sentence, in fact. Change will continue to happen. It's our job to make sure that the waters are calm and more settled, especially when you go down to hotel level and to the line employee level, because we know more. They are having this movie in their mind all the time. And this is not about only the acquisition that we went through, but in any situation. They don't know any better. So they need to be calmed down, and communication is the key, so that we are transparent, having town hall meetings, encouraging them to speak up, give anonymous questions, having feedback, suggestion boxes, etc. Thank you.
Navjit, now that you're out of the Marriott system, you can, I think, probably speak a little freer than you would have otherwise. How do you handle the kind of transition if you get taken over by, let's say, your prime competitor? And suddenly there's this whole piece around all the senior managers and the employees who love to compete. I mean, Oberoi versus Taj, you always have that level of competition. How do you manage and amalgamate that kind of a situation? And what you tell the poor Starwood guys?
So I think that this is the age where there's going to be consolidation. So I think we are going to see more of similar situations occurring. And I think for a majority of the people working in both companies, I think it was positive, because I don't think anybody in the hotels were affected. In fact, they probably saw much more opportunity to grow, many more new hotels that would open up, and so their careers would really progress much faster. So I would say for 95% or even higher, people in both companies, there was no impact virtually of the consolidation.
So how would you advise everybody here that if
So
their
the-
company went through something of that kind, what should they be alive to, thoughtful about, curious about, so that they can assimilate the change better, if it happens?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to be able to be seen as somebody who's a performer in your own current situation, and somebody who's also open to change, open to learning new things. Of course, I think there were positive pieces of the culture that Starwood had, and there were positive pieces of Marriott culture. And when the two companies came together, there is that intent to integrate, positive features of both, so that the combined consolidated entity is much more powerful and, as a sum of parts than they were individually. So I think that, like I said, only at the very top of the corporate level were some people adversely affected, and that, I think, is part of the game.
Sure.
Will happen. It can happen in your current company. It can happen when you get taken over by another company. But I think for large people, I mean, all the general managers, all the department heads, everybody, for them it was definitely a huge new vista opening up of opportunity.
Rohit, so on the panel, you're the last one of the Indian hero companies. So therefore, if that be the case, what is it that...
Lasting one.
Okay, I stand corrected. That's fine. That's a good one. Yeah. What is your input to everybody to say, how does a lasting brand continue to morph into other areas of excellence, and therefore what is everybody's readiness to do that, so that you can still stand tall within this whole changing mergers, acquisition, environment change world? Because something about the older companies will always remain a little staid, a little conservative. There'll be smaller elephants to fry. So how would you handle that? You can speak freely. Puneet's still here? Yeah, he's still there. So you can be cautious.
No, I think, every organization has its challenges, and I somewhere do agree with what Navjit is saying, that one needs to be very conscious about what's happening around you. And for any large or traditional company, it's important to continuously look at what you're doing, and also look at what you're doing vis-a-vis what others are doing, and have the ability and the courage and the perseverance to change what you're doing, or the way you're doing what you're doing. I think to keep yourself current is very, very important.
Okay.
For an organization to stay long-term in the business. The second thing is that there are some things that a large organization or a large brand, old brand brings to the table is the strength of the people, is the strength of the value system. I think as long as we stick to the core values that we have of our own human values and values in business, and we are open enough to take from whatever is happening around, you can continuously grow. So I think if we look at our particular company, which started off as just one brand, Taj, and today, as you can see, the needs of the market, the various levels at which the market operates, the nuances of handling that market are so different that just one brand can't handle that. So we need to have multiple brands. And as you know, that whether it was Ginger that was launched a decade ago, or then the Vivanta, and now obviously Selections, that is the newest offering that we have, is something that I don't want to steal Mr. Chatwal's thunder away for his presentation coming a little later,
Yeah.
but
Well played.
he will I'm sure all of you will be quite keenly watching what his story is, and I think his story will actually answer this question very well.
So I'm going to put all of you on a spot. Name one thing about a competing brand that you believe they do better and you wish you could adopt.
I'll go. It's an easy question, I think.
Yeah, no, you can't name Marriott and Starwood.
No, I'm going to name Oberoi for service.
Okay, so what would you replicate, and why would you think
I think the
it's
service,
different?
for them, the customer comes first.
You
And
mean
I
for
think
your
for
brand
a
it
lot
doesn't?
of international companies are really, for them, the priority is the employee, right? The team member, the associate. And in India, I think this focus towards the customer that Oberoi has is truly I mean, people really, I mean, if you go, I mean, I always, the cocktail party test. When you're at a cocktail party and there's some other few people around and, people talk about hotels, I doubt there'll be anybody who will ever say something about Oberoi that's negative. It's always a positive.
So why
about the
would you, I'm
service.
going to drag this question, why would you think it has succeeded with them, but you feel that the other companies are not able to replicate or do better? What's limiting it? I mean, there's no rocket science about it.
So I think one is skill. I mean, obviously, and it's been a legacy of that over time that's been kind of built up. It's not been built up in a day. And it's the focus to that specific thing. I think so. It's a number of factors. And I think that every company wants to be able to say we're equally good. But I think the acid tested, are they as good? And I don't think that's the case right now.
Sure.
But I think anybody who can get that right is going to be the winner, ultimately.
So, sorry, jump on this.
No,
side.
that's okay. We
Go
can
right ahead.
jump in and out.
I feel what we look at our competitors, and we kind of sometimes are in awe of them, is their ability to scale.
Who? Name one. You have to name the person.
Yeah, well, I mean, the largest competitor that has entered the market recently, obviously after the combination of Starwood and Marriott, is their ability to scale their brands and their ability to, to multiply. And I think what happens with traditional companies like ours is that we have been growing, at 8 to 10 hotels on an average a year. It's a slow and steady process. And in order to, speed up or, put yourself on a turbocharge, you need to have the skills to be able to scale and scale very quickly. And I think that is something that we would definitely like to learn, but retain our ethos, our values, our culture, and what the Taj stands for. So I think that's very, very important. As IHCL being established in 1903, we have a reputation to protect.
So I just want to put both of you on the spot. So one guy is saying the other guy don't do service very well. You're saying that ethical value system not so good. You're not speaking very well about your competitors. But go on, Ajay.
Just to follow through on what Navjit is saying about Oberoi before I come to my point, I think in the Oberoi case, it's a very clear, uncompromising focus on quality, number one, and on the guest satisfaction, which comes from every employee, from everyone's heart. It's an ethos that runs through all the way. And it's not lost in GOPs and stuff like that. It's not that it's not a profitable company, they don't run profitable hotels, but that part it sticks out beyond everything else. For me, Lemon Tree Hotels, they do their social media, they do their web marketing, online stuff a lot smarter than we do. And we're hoping to catch up and go ahead.
I take that compliment.
Bonus points.
Yeah.
Bonus points. Look, when I was growing up and did my hotel management, in 1983, my first exposure to a hotel was Taj Mansingh as a summer training. And of course, Puneet Chatwal is in the room. He and I are from the same hotel batch, Pusa, same year. And very quickly after I did my summer training, my younger brother, he joined Taj as a steward, as a busboy, in fact, and kept on getting promoted to be a general manager, including some international assignments. So Taj in our house was a household name. I mean, everybody knew Taj, everybody knew Ronnie Lobo and the likes, and it was all about Taj while I was having my tenure international. But whenever I thought of India, Taj and Oberoi were the two brands. Taj certainly more close home. But forget about the personal aspect. The fact is that Taj has done a lot, bringing India to the availability of hotel rooms and hotels to the forefront where guests could stay. They are amongst the earlier brands that opened India and welcomed guests. But what I've seen is that people in Taj, they are promoted from within. They are allowed to succeed. They are allowed enough empowerment to grow with the company as the company expands, and they take care of their own. I think that's a great value that Taj has, and it's a brand that is homegrown in India, has internationally traveled, and now appears to be full steam ahead to take on the market in terms of the new advent of international brands that have proliferated into India. So I'm a great admirer of Taj.
So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue with the questions, but I'm going to end when we have about 7, 8, 10 minutes left. So if you have any questions, just keep feeding them back to the admin team on the right. We heard Ritesh in the morning. The typical conversation is shared economy. Shared economy legal, not legal, Airbnb in trouble in one country, Uber in trouble in another country. How do you believe we can compete with this whole system, which partially we believe may not be legal completely, but the growth is so quick, and it's just a totally different segment. If you were to give a quick thought of strategy to say, this is one thing that I would want to do so that I am ahead of any threat from the shared economy. I'm sure you've discussed it all in your board meetings.
Yeah, well, for us, I think it's while we do adopt a lot of technology and how things are happening in the world, but I think sticking to your knitting is very, very important. We've been around for over 115 years. A lot of people have come and gone, and the only reason why we have been around is because we stick to doing what we do well. I don't want to go into the previous question about which is more hospitable or which is more professional, so I would leave that. But I think we bring to the table something that is a world-renowned brand, it stands for something, and others will come up, and if it makes business sense, if the business model is interesting, and we have the appetite, you look at that.
So are you saying that Taj in the future, there's a lot of journalists here that you're looking at shared economy as one thought, if it kind of comes as an opportunity?
Pardon?
Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
The Taj, the developmental piece, will be looking at shared economy too? Gentlemen,
Well,
ladies in the press, please.
Never say never. In the end, we have a responsibility towards our stakeholders and our shareholders, and if that's the way the market is growing and that's the future of the industry, we need to evaluate options.
Sure.
And I think
But stay with the basics.
Too very close to what you're doing is not really necessarily best, but it is also very important to do that in order to retain your identity.
Navjit?
So I think the shared economy has been around for hundreds of years, in the sense that not in the same way it is today, but it's been around. So, and still the hotel business has continued to grow and explode. So I think we've had our largest growth in the last 10 years, while Airbnb and such has grown. So I think that the big difference is that all hotel companies own the experiences they create. That's a big differentiator. And the shared economy doesn't have that ability. And at the end of the day, if you're able to do a good job at how you create these experiences, how you control that, and I think that's why I go back always to the service aspect, because that will be the differentiator. Because ultimately, I think that if there's a level playing field, which there wasn't so far, and therefore there's this huge growth in the shared economy platforms, because they had an unfair advantage. But I think once there's a level playing field as far as life safety is concerned, security is concerned, legislation around what you can do on which areas, and commercial, non-commercial, so on and so forth, they cannot still ultimately control. They don't have something around which they are controlling the experience, and they don't really own that customer. In a way, they cannot personalize to the customer. They don't have that loyalty to the customer through that channel that hotel brands have.
Sure.
And I think that's our biggest strength. And as we keep improving upon that and building on that as our core competency, I think OTAs or the shared economy, they can't really, and I think they'll get squeezed because they don't have the assets, they don't have the brand, they're playing this middle game in the middle, and that's been good so far. But I think if you look at 10 years from now, the situation could be quite different.
Yeah, okay. Ajay?
I think the really smart guys in that space are going to be the people who have a hold on data, who have a hold on billions of bytes of data and really micro analysis available to them. At hotels, we are still working 50 years.
Sure.
Too old, too far behind. And we are happy with ref hours and those stuff. That's kid stuff. So really, the gulf we have to bridge to be able to compete on those guys' terms is to get a grip on data and perhaps bring in data management guys who are totally out of the world, who are total nerds, give them a cockpit to operate in, and say bring me in the tiniest microscopic data of who's my customer, what age, where is he coming from, how long, what does he read, what does he buy, what's he looking at, and it's all available on the net at the moment. None of it is rocket science. We are far, far, far away from there. I think the smarter hotel companies that really succeed in the future are going to be the ones who have a good handle on data.
Anything to add before we throw it open for questions?
Sure, sure. I think the very definition of shared economy is going to change. I do believe that, that the borders between brands and geographical borders will get blurred. The role of general managers and technocrats will get blurred. The way hotels are shopped will get blurred. For example, some of you may have heard the term blockchain, and if not, then just a few words. Today, as you can imagine, a hotel is sold in many different formats. In blockchain format, you literally, a stock buyer, it is sold like a stock. It's sold like a share price. That I have X room number 402, and it's sold for $200, and it keeps on selling until just the day before the arrival, you'll finally get the actual price and the actual name, the blockchain. So it's only for Google and someone else to step in before the way hotels are sold and traded is going to dynamically change. So I think we just have to prepare for this in the coming times, and probably all of us in our heart of the house will be busy with screwdrivers fixing robots. I think that is probably going to be
come back to it. I think so. Financial learning, legal learning, and how to avoid commoditization and be part of this commodity world will be the challenges of our world tomorrow. I'm just going to take a pause. Are there any questions that you want to ask? Otherwise, we can go on. Gentleman here in front. You picked up the mic. Anybody in the audience? Yeah, please.
The light has to come on here.
Announce your name. If you can just pass the mic, give us your name and where you work. And badger the guys. This is your only chance. You'll never get it again.
So this is Vansh. I'm a fresh graduate. Just the question to the leaders that, since the millennials are on an all-time rise and it's one of the target audience, we've seen Accor with brands like Joe & Joe or Marriott with brands like Moxie, which attract a lot of millennials. Where do we see these brands coming into India, or more brands of such, such competitor brands coming to India, and how do we see that? Where is the future of these sort of brands in India?
Who would you like to answer that question for you?
Anybody?
Name one.
I'll take a stab at
Mr.
it.
Rana.
Okay. I'll take a stab at it. Many of these brands are having technology of tomorrow. That is one common theme that you see in all these brands. Because a millennial minded, and it is not millennial, it's nothing to do with the age, but the mindset, is willing to go without room service, but is not willing to go without technology. They like gathering spots. They like the sense of community. So, of course, I don't have to tell all these things. But in India, for all this to come, or for that matter, anywhere else, you see, when you come to a hotel room, you're not there to study pamphlets and understand technology just for the night or two that you're staying in. The technology that you want has to be such that is pervasive in your lives and you're using it at home or otherwise comfortable. So, unless and until that becomes mainstream in India, in our homes, it is not going to as easily be embraced in the hotels that we stay in. So this lag time, this lag period is what we are watching as to when does it become more center place in our lives usually. That's one aspect. The second is the social aspect of it, that the gathering places that we like, that we don't want to sit in our own room and have dinner. That for sure we are clearly seeing a trend even now. And that's why probably is the reason why hotel restaurants are not doing as well, or hotel lounges. Because the youngsters, they want to hang around and they want to go explore the city or go elsewhere. So some of it has to do with the social dynamics. Some of it has to do with the embracement of technology and its infiltration in our own lives. And of course, we welcome these brands because generally it does seem that they're on a smaller footprint, single plate food and beverage. They are more cost efficient to build as well as to operate. So we are all watching this space, and I would not be surprised a few years from now, those will be the main type of hotels that will be built.
Anyone else? Yep. Gentleman up across.
Good morning. This is Vishal Gupta, General Manager, Hilton, Jaipur. My question is, how should we train our young millennials when they keep on moving after every 6 months or 1 year for better jobs? Because there's so much differentiation in supply and demand in India right now.
Who would you like to answer that question?
Anybody can jump in this one.
No, anybody not. You choose the person you want to answer the question. The other person can jump in after that.
Well, Navjit has already told me multiple times, so Mr. Khosla, if you'd like to.
Okay, I think, it's like with any problem, you need to first understand it. If you're facing a problem of high turnover, especially in the millennial group, you need to understand what are the motivators. It's not about training them and watching them go. It's about training them and making them stay. And what is going to make them stay? I think, there are quite a few millennials in the room right now. One of asked us the question, why would a millennial stay in an organization? I think for that matter, why would any one of us stay in an organization? If an organization is contributing to our learning, to our growth, to our development, to providing us exposure, giving us a reasonable remuneration, I think there's no reason for you to keep on switching organizations. People switch organizations because they get bored. I think we have to be more interactive with millennials. Millennials we need to engage with them, we need to understand them, and then tailor-make their careers, plans, so that they're retained rather than losing them to somebody else. So my take is understand them and then work with them.
So if I may add to this, there's a colleague of Navjit and I from ESSEC, and he had done this huge study a few years ago, and I think he presented it at one of the earlier conferences, which said that you have to understand that the millennials look for their own communities and their own groups. And if you're not alive to the fact as to how do you identify their related groups in your own organization, and therefore you find a way to communicate in that subgroup and find common interests of that subgroup, then the subgroup is more important than your company and yourself. And that's just the world that we're in. So you've got to figure out what are their communities, just like you're trying to figure out the communities around your guests and opening up community spaces because that's what they want. You need to be alive to the fact that they are looking for a different kind of engagement, a different kind of community, and you have to facilitate it. Once you do that, the loyalty and the engagement will remain. Anyone else?
On the right.
Yeah, Achin?
Thanks, Mr. Keswani. I'm Achin Khanna from Hotelivate. Gentlemen on the stage, there is data to prove that less than 3% of India's hotels charge more than $200 a night on a year-round average basis.
I missed that question, we ran out of time. Good one. Please do ask now.
And I'd be keen to know the panel's views on, just from a global standpoint, we'd like to claim that we're a global nation, we're competing in a flat hierarchy, we're competing in an environment where most growing economies are charging far more than we do. I worry about how little we charge as an industry, and I recognize the fact that the weighted average rate of India may be skewed because of budget economy, mid-scale players now being more prominent. But what about the upscale hotels, and why are we just not able to charge more than $200 a night?
Hey, the budget and mid-scale want these guys to change the rates, so please raise that question again.
Completely.
Yeah, please, everybody answer.
I think, every organization has its own priorities, and I guess every organization reads the market in a different way. We have been listening to a lot of industry reports from experts like Hotelivate and whether it's your other colleagues in the consulting business. Everybody's talking about the fact that the demand is now outstripping supply, and this is the time to raise the prices. And frankly speaking, our goal is to increase the prices. But unfortunately, it seems that it's not such a collective decision because I guess there are pressures, owner pressures. There is a supply that came in at a time when the demand wasn't good. They've been through some bad times. There is a hesitation, a fear that by increasing prices you'll lose volume. But I think it is for established players to realize that this is a passing phase, and this is after a very long time, after an 8-period hiatus, an upturn has come in our industry, and I think it's time for us to increase prices, and I couldn't agree with you more.
I was told by Mandeep Lamba of JLL last week that if hotel ARRs don't increase in India, only the GMs are to blame or hotel companies are to blame. I'd like to see any hotel consultant get into a hotel GM's role and change the rates and show me how it is done. The first guys to benefit from a rate increase are going to be the hotels themselves and the operating company and the owners. Now, it's dynamic. A large chunk of it is with OTAs. We've tried, and I've always had this belief in my mind that if you're over a 70% occupancy, and if you're a business hotel, that means you're doing a 90, 95, 100, 3-4 days in a week. Why the hell won't your rates go up? So he said, okay, I don't want to listen to you guys, push up the rates. We've in a couple of cases, fallen on our faces because the market just doesn't accept that higher rate. You can either sit back and say, that's all I'm going to be, and perhaps some of us are in that luxury situation of saying, I really don't care, I'm going to keep it empty till I get this rate. Most of us are not in that position. We go back to RFP negotiations that had to happen at the beginning of the year. We have to negotiate. You've got large volumes coming in. You try saying to the guy on the other side who's got 3, 4, 5, 10,000 room nights, this is my rate, take it or leave it. We wouldn't have a job tomorrow if we did those things. So I think one's got to keep it in perspective. Demand supply is the key. As demand is growing, and we hope it does grow, despite the hiccup of the elections next year, we're going to see probably a flattish kind of a year, but then demand is going to grow. As it grows, the rates will grow. But you can't just take a theoretical approach and say rates are wrong. I agree they're wrong. Try fixing them. We can't get together and fix them. It hasn't worked in any part of the world. It's not going to work in this one either. Unless you are two hotel companies or two hotels in a city and you say, hey, nothing less than this. It doesn't work in an environment where there are loans to repay, et cetera, et cetera. So while I take your point, and I think we are at the lower end of the spectrum, I think we need firmer demand for the rates to go up.
So answer your question, Ajay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. Could you join me in giving the panel a hearty applause? And thank you for joining us this morning.